Well, we were using the phrase as well. My great mentor, Robert Welsh, used to tell us, New World Order is their slogan, and here's what it means. It means political control through world government. It means economic control through socialism. Mr. Clinton is in favor of both. And the American people are not. But how do you get the American people, the heirs of all the ages? We are what the poet said, the heirs of all the ages. The finest governmental system ever put together. The freest people who have ever lived. How do you get the American people to give up what they have? Their wonderful heritage. Well, first of all, you make them go to schools where it's not taught. And secondly, you scare them into giving it up. You scare them. You corrupt them. You buy some. We've been scared with communism. Communism was fearful, right? There's no doubt about it. But what the communists had and aimed at us was given them by the United States. Airborne communications pods, radar, tire cord factories, chemical plants, machine tools, computers, and the money to buy them, and then we cancel the debt and we say it's good for business. And it's bringing the Soviets closer to us so they don't aim their missiles at us. We spent billions and billions and billions of dollars defending ourselves from what we gave the Soviet Union in the first place. All the while, we were disarming America at the behest of the United Nations. One of our affiliated corporations publishes the New American Magazine. And this issue that was in November, the New World Army, American troops are being conscripted into a New World Army under the United Nations. The entire issue is on that subject. Several of the articles written by your speaker, who happens to be the publisher of the magazine. I get what I want in my magazine, right? For many, many years, I've been carrying around with me a little booklet issued by the State Department in 1961. A little booklet called Freedom from War, and we reproduced it entirely as it was given by the State Department in 1961. As it was presented to the United Nations by President Kennedy, September 1961. Freedom from War, a three-step program leading to turning over the military of the United States to the United Nations. It's being implemented, ladies and gentlemen. All parts of it, many parts of it, have been completely accomplished. We're down now into stage 3. And the final in stage 3 says this: progressive controlled disarmament would proceed to a point where no state would have the power to challenge the progressively strengthened UN peace force. You'll even find in this why there is such an attack upon the private ownership of weapons. The next to last paragraph in this treasonous program that has never been withdrawn, and I checked with somebody at the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency just a few months ago before I wrote this last article, and I asked, is this program still in effect? He said, well, they've reissued it under another name called the Blueprint for the Peace Race. I said, I know that. It's just an expanded version of the other one. He said, you're right about that. Yes, it's still in effect and it's still unfolding. And I said, I know that. Thank you for confirming it. It says here the manufacture of armaments would be prohibited except for those agreed types and quantities to be used by the UN peace force. No weapons for the people. I run into people who say, well, the Second Amendment is really for the hunters and target shooters. And I say, you know no history. You know none whatsoever. The Second Amendment is there to guarantee the God-given right to bear arms to protect yourself from your own government. Precisely. I'm going to ask you to pick up my book, if you haven't already, before we finish here, but I want you to pick up a copy of this, The New World Army, and realize that this is being used to destroy the military and to turn it over to the godless United Nations. Well, communism could scare us into world government, and they've said that that's what they want to do, some of them. Environmentalism could as well. Way back around that same period, 1962, 63, 64, 15 prominent individuals met at a place called Iron Mountain in New York. to devise some sort of a program that could lead people into world government other than the nuclear threat. In other words, let's have a substitute if the nuclear threat against the American people doesn't work. And it was a secret meeting, and they put together a report, but one of the members of the group thought it was so wonderful, he gave it to somebody, and it was published, John Kenneth Galbraith. We don't know who the other 14 were. I don't know if we'll ever find out. But we have the report, and we've published it. We've made it available. Somebody else published it. We make it available. What did they say? Well, they substituted environmentalism for the nuclear threat. They said this in 1963-64. They said, it may be, for instance, that gross pollution of the environment can eventually replace the possibility of mass destruction by nuclear weapons as the principal apparent threat to the survival of the species. Even they said apparent. Even they did. And of course, don't we see global warming being used to give up our national sovereignty and depletion of the ozone and who knows what else? I was remarking to somebody, I was on the radio several places today, and I was remarking to somebody that if there weren't environmental regulations that had locked up Alaska, we wouldn't have to import a drop of oil. We wouldn't have to get precious metals from South Africa to make high-temperature steels. Everything is in Alaska, and 97% of the state is locked up. The Arctic National Wildlife Range, a huge tract of land in the northeast corner of that state. They locked it up for a wildlife range so people could go and enjoy the wildlife. I met with the top geologist in the state of Alaska a few years ago, and I said, how many people have gone into the Arctic National Wildlife Range to watch the birds and the caribou and so forth? And he said, in a calendar year, guess. You guess. I said, 10,000. He laughed. He said 250. 250. And it's locked up. There are a lot of Americans who like birds, and they contribute money to the National Audubon Society. And there are other people who worry about this aspect of the environment, and you should. And I'm for clean water, and I'm for nice, neat highways that don't have trash all along the side of them, and I want clean air, and yes, but I don't want to have to give up my freedom for it. And I don't think I have to. But the president of the Audubon Society recently said, we reject the idea of property rights. Wonderful. To protect the birds? Well, we're having these kinds of things happen to us. And so we see threats from communism, we see threats from the environment, and now we see a threat from national debt. National debt is now $4.5 trillion. What's $1 trillion? I dare say many of you couldn't tell me how many zeros are in $1 trillion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, $1 trillion, if you paid it off at the rate of $1,000 a day, it would take you 2,740,000 years. If you paid it off at $1 million a day, it would take you 2,740 years. But our national debt isn't $1 trillion, it's $4.5 trillion. In 1992, President Clinton, campaigning for the office of president, said that he would cut government spending $3 for every $1 in new taxes. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have $15 in new taxes for every $1 in spending cuts. Just completely reversed and greatly added to. We have now $300 billion in interest on the national debt annually. Now, these figures, what do they mean? I mean, this is so vast you can't comprehend them. So let's try and bring it down to some comprehensible numbers here. There are about 250 million Americans, so a little long division here. If there's any math teachers in the room, they'd appreciate this. Right? 250 million people, $300 billion in interest. Well, that boils down to about $1,200 per man, woman, and child in America every year just for interest on the national debt. It doesn't pay off the national debt. It doesn't pay for the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force, or any of the bureaucracy or anything else, just for interest on the national debt. But, ladies and gentlemen, you and I know that not everybody's a taxpayer.